Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the first episode of Book Club, where we're going to be covering The House of Hades by Rick Riordan, which is book 4 in the Heroes of Olympus series. Again, just to shout out, if you guys have other stories you would like us to cover within this channel, like for future Book Club episodes and series, dude, please feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to get suggestions. I'm looking forward to all sorts of stories. The Harry Potter series, for sure. The Road, which was a film adaptation that was amazing. I've never read the actual book, and I really look forward to something like that. But yeah, any genre, whatever. I'm more of a fiction guy, but if you guys have good nonfiction that you think would be great, please shout it out there on Twitter with @AJApplesauce. Let me know in the comment section down below. You can hit me up on Snapchat as well. I'll have that link down in the description. Anyway, let's get started. So the House of Hades book 4 starts off pretty somewhat immediately, about 9 days I think after the events of the Mark of Athena book 3, which has the crew Hazel, Leo, Frank Zhang. We also have Piper and Jason Grace. They're all on the Argo 2, and they're on their way to Epirus, which is where the mortal side of the Doors of Death is located. It's again, I believe it's 9 days. It references and it lets you know how many days it's been, according to Annabeth's chapter, which begins in chapter 5. Actually, it goes from her point of view. But starting this first chapter off, we're under the perspective of Hazel, and again, it's the Argo 2 going through this mountainous range. I believe it's in the Apennines, or Apennines, however you pronounce that. And they're being chased down and really like attacked by these mountain gods called, I believe, the Nomina Montana, something like that. I probably butchered it. It's in Roman. I don't quite remember how it was spelled. But anyway, yeah, that's like really troublesome. They realize that they cannot get to the Doors of Death, or the House of Hades, rather, as soon as they'd like to, because of this turbulence that they're going through. So they realize they have to take a separate path. And along the way, our favorite little like demigod companion Arion, Hazel's horse, comes out of nowhere, appears from the ground, and Hazel realizes that it's been so long, there must be a reason why he's here. She gets really excited. She has the Argo 2 lowered so that way she can safely get to him from like a rope ladder, because again they can't get too low because Gaia, who is the main antagonist within this series, is like the Earth giant, and she controls all of Earth, and while she is still sleeping, she still has great influence over the world and what's going on. The reason why they're trying to get to the House of Hades, or at least the Doors of Death to begin with, is to deliver the Athena Parthenos, which is this giant ivory and gold statue that they got in the previous book, which pretty much prevents the dead from coming back from the dead. That's the problem with that's the main issue within the storyline, is that really whatever is dying does not stay in the underworld. They're coming and they're taking over the world, and it's kind of a problem. So the demigods are trying to get to the Epirus, as I mentioned, to deliver the statue and be able to stop all of this from happening. So that's what their mission is. Anyway, as I mentioned, Hazel hops onto Arion, and Arion takes her to this open meadow, which is where she meets the goddess Hecate, or Hecate. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that either. Again, that's a Greek name, I believe. Sometimes the pronunciations are a little interesting to me. But anyway, I'm going to call her Hecate, probably. Anyway, but yeah, she's kind of a cool goddess. She's the goddess of magic. I think she has a few other titles to her. But she pretty much tells Hazel that there's going to be this trial up ahead once they reach the House of Hades, and apparently there's this witch there that can only be defeated by magic, not by weapons or any other physical means. And the only way that Hazel can beat her is if she learns how to wield the mist, which Hecate informs her that she knew Hazel's mother back when Hazel was originally alive. Again, for those of you who are unaware of the previous books in this Heroes of Olympus series 1 through 3, you realize that Hazel is a daughter of Pluto in Roman, or Hades as you might know him in Greek. So yeah, that is the issue there. However, her mother was known for dabbling in like a voodoo kind of like magic called grease. She was into charms and curses, and while Hazel thought this was just like a day job thing for her mom, she didn't really believe in it. It turns out that she was actually quite skilled in it. And Hecate tells Hazel that she's even better than her mom was, and probably because she's a demigod. Her mom, I believe, was just a human that was lucky enough to gain that ability. But since Hazel is a daughter of Pluto, or Hades, she has great potential to become even stronger than what her mom was able to do. And again, so she has the possibility of learning how to wield the mist, which is a magic that, or ability to be able to reform images to look like something else, or potentially physically become something else. You know, the mist really alters perception for mortals and demigods, immortals alike. You know, and that's the beauty of it. That's what makes it so powerful. Again, I'm not sure how she's going to be able to use that against the witch, but I mean, we'll see. Perhaps the witch has a weakness that we're not yet aware of with chapters 1 through 10, which I mentioned in the announcement video that I posted yesterday, is that we're pretty much going to be going 10 chapters per episode, at least one episode per week, I would say. That's probably what I'm going to have to be consistent on. Just with school and work, it's a little hard to kind of balance everything. So I thought 10 chapters, one episode a week would be pretty good for us. The chapters aren't too bad really at all. They're like 5 to 10 pages around there per chapter. So again, it's not too heavy. 78 chapter book. Again, don't let the big numbers freak you out if 78 seems like a lot of chapters. Again, the chapters are kind of short. They're really just the way Rick Riordan writes the chapters, and this series in particular are from multiple perspectives from each character, from each main character really, from each protagonist. So again, as I said, we start off with Hazel's perspective, and then jumping over to chapter 5, we go to Annabeth's perspective, which leads up 9 days after the events of the Mark of Athena, where they fall into this giant chasm, where I believe the what is that villain's name? Arachne, the giant spider freak. I think she was previously a goddess, and then Athena smited her by turning her into a gigantic, gross, grotesque spider. Anyway, so yeah, that the Arachne and at the end of Mark of Athena, spoiler alert, like tangled up her webs into Annabeth at the very end, pulled her down, and then Percy decided to go down into the underworld with her, into Tartarus, really, which is like the prison for all evil, or all the dead, really, especially the giants. It's known for, to keep the giants at bay. But again, the problem is that without the Athena Parthenos, that giant statue of Athena, being in the underworld, there's nothing to keep them from uprising. So that is an issue. All it takes is a lot of power and energy to be wielded, and then the more powerful monster, the more energy that's acquired, then they can go up into Earth and then wreak as much havoc as they want. And the only thing is, what makes this hard to deal with, is that demigods have to have the assistance of gods in order to defeat a giant. That's just the way it works out. They need that assistance. And so anyway, that is the issue here, and it goes 9 days of them actually falling. That's where it follows up with Annabeth and Percy. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, they've been falling 9 days nonstop. They're clinging to one another. It's kind of cool, but it kind of reminded me of like the Two Towers, like the opening of Two Towers with Gandalf fighting the Balrog all the way down underground. That was pretty cool, and he finally kills it. But yeah, that's kind of what it reminded me of. They're continuously falling to this endless chasm, and then finally, like they were able to spot like this little river. I believe it's called the Casitas. I think that's how it's pronounced. And Percy, being the son of Poseidon, is able to wield the river to be able to catch them. Like he arcs it up into the air, which is kind of cool. Cushions their fall, and they splash down into the river. The only problem is, like, you would think, oh, okay, well, he's the goddess of, or he's the demigod of water that can wield water. He's like one of the strongest demigods ever. There should be no problem. They landed in water. Great. But the problem is, in Tartarus, like, the atmosphere and the water, everything about the place is draining. You know, it's for the dead. It's a prison of the dead, to keep them at bay, to keep them weak. Just to simply give them enough energy to get by, but barely. And, for something that's living, it's meant to kill them, really. And so he's like dying, and Annabeth is dying, but she's like a little more, she has slightly more energy because, you know, Percy exhausted the last of his energy trying to be able to wield that river to be able to catch their fall and cushion it. And so she's like having to like wrap her arm around him, and like she's like trying to like swim to the edge of the river to be able to get them over to the shore. And it leads up to like one of the like best exchanges I've ever read in anything by Rick Riordan, and it's something along the lines of like, you know, Annabeth is trying to like keep Percy awake to like help her to have him help her swim to the shore, and she's like trying to keep his mind busy and like trying to keep his mind off the pain and dying, really. And she's like saying like you know, oh, like tell me about like New Rome, like, and he explains to her in the previous book that, you know, he would like to move with her one day, maybe, and start a new life, maybe get married, possibly have kids, something, you know. He's hinting towards it, and so she brings that up again to kind of excite him and give him some inspiration to live, you know, because he's drained. He's dying. And so, like, she's saying, like, yeah, come on, like, tell me about New Rome. Do you want to go to college? What would you like to study? You know, like, she throws out different subjects, like marine biology, you know, you're son of Neptune or Poseidon, whichever you prefer to call him, what would you like to do? And then he says something along the lines of, like, surfing, and then she laughs, and I thought that was actually really cool because that would, if I could do that in college, that'd be my major as well. Totally, that'd be rad. Anyway, so I thought that was really cool, and eventually, he's able to kick and help them get across the river Casitas to the shore, and then they realize that they're pretty much like, again, they're dying. They got enough energy they mustered enough energy to get to the side of the shore, and then they're out of this river, but still they're dying. But Annabeth does recall that the river that they were in has powers to be able to, as I mentioned earlier, it's just enough to give the dead enough energy to be able to suffer throughout their existence there. But it's also the river is called like Casitas, the river of lamentation, I believe. But it also has like another meaning, which is like the river of healing as well. And it being that any dead that float through this river, again, they're given enough energy to be able to live, so that way they can suffer throughout all the pain and drainingness of that river. And so they decide to drink from it. But since it's like from Tartarus, of course, it's like filled with like fire. It basically burns them from the inside, but it actually in a way heals them too. It regenerates their cells, and they're able to live a little bit longer. And so they decide that they have to do something. They made it down to Tartarus, which is where they need to be. Unfortunately, it's only two of them. But again, they need two groups, one on each side of the Doors of Death. One in Tartarus, and then one on the mortal side, which is where the team on the Argo 2 is headed. And so they're going to meet somewhere in the middle, hopefully. But the thing is, they have to synchronize this. And with two teams being in two different areas with no way to really communicate with each other, it's going to be really hard, and it hasn't quite been explained yet how they're going to be able to do so, which makes it exciting. I wonder how they're going to be able to strategize that. If they're just going to hope for the best and meet up, I'm not sure, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty of obstacles along the way. Anyway, so yes, they decide, okay, how are we going to go about this? They have no bearings. They've never really been to Tartarus before. And so all of a sudden they go to this giant cliff, which reveals a huge canyon below them. It's compared to like the Grand Canyon. It might even say that it's bigger than the Grand Canyon. I forget. But anyway, Annabeth points out a river that's called the Phlegethon, I think it's pronounced. And what it is known for is leading in and out of Tartarus, I believe. And if you follow it a certain direction, be it upstream or downstream, I forget which, then it'll lead you deeper and deeper into Tartarus. And if it leads you to the heart of Tartarus, then that could show you to where the Doors of Death are, I do believe. And like the deeper you go, the only problem with that is, yes, you do reach the doors, but the closer you get to the doors, the further in you get into Tartarus, the more dangerous your monsters you're going to run into, the worse creatures you're going to have to deal with. And so that is an issue right there.